deliberative body, as it's like to call itself for a long time, is actually more dysfunctional than Britain's House of Lords. It's not as representative in many ways as Britain's House of Lords because in California we get 2 senators with 38 million people, and Wyoming gets 2 senators with 500,000 people. But in addition to that, they have something called the filibuster. And the filibuster going wild Senate means that you need to have, instead of 51 out of 100 votes to pass legislation, you need 60 votes to cut off debate on any particular issue. And if you don't have 60 votes to cut off debate, you can never get to the vote on the issue itself, on the legislation. They have enough votes to prevent the lifting of the filibuster. They only represent, because of this 2 senators per state regardless of population, they only represent 1/3 of the nation. So representatives representing 1/3 of the nation are able to stop in its tracks what representatives of 2/3 of the nation want. This is what's going on a weekly basis in the United States right now. And it's led to total paralysis on health care, where the bill that was passed was watered down. It took a lot longer to pass it because of this needing 60 votes instead of 51 votes. And of course, global climate change, financial re-regulation, all the major issues that are outstanding are either taking longer than anyone thought or are being stopped in their tracks cold. And so this is what you have to realize going forward, as I said to the members of the European Commission, because they said, we thought we could lead by example. And I said, well, example is all well and good, but the problem is that there's actually, I think there is a consensus among the population in the United States to move forward on these issues, but the political system is unresponsive. There was the stimulus package, as well as the budget for things like green energy, high-speed rail, was getting continually whittled down, and finally the high-speed rail was whittled down to $300,000. That's peanuts. I mean, that's not even enough. That's just enough to maintain a few jobs. And so Obama went to Rahm Emanuel, who's his chief of staff and the person leading this legislative effort, and he told him, I want a transformative amount of money put into this package for high-speed rail. And as a result of that, because of the personal intervention of President Obama, $8 billion eventually was put into the high-speed rail budget. In fact, it's the first time they've created a high-speed rail program at the federal level. There never was one before. The only high-speed train we had was the Acela train between Washington, D.C. and New York, and more of the good ethanol instead of the bad ethanol, if you know what I mean by that. And the energy grid, in America we have lots of places where you can put windmills, but you can't necessarily bring the power produced from the place where the windmills are in the middle of the country where there's not many people to the place where people live. Because the energy grid is so old and obsolete, it's hard to move energy from, say, Oklahoma to Chicago, or to Seattle, or other parts of the United States. So, and Europe is actually doing a lot. The energy grids need to serve a different purpose today. If you want to bring power from windmills in the North Sea down to Italy, the energy grid in Italy Europe can't really accommodate this either. And so there's a lot of research going on, a lot of effort being put into to make these energy grids more efficient. Also putting a lot of money into battery research for fuel cell cars and cars that can run on battery power instead of on hydrocarbons. The state of Texas actually is becoming a leader in the United States in developing wind power, where you get the same amount of luminosity for about 10% of the power. Motion sensor lights. When I walk into a hotel and as I walk, all the lights start lighting ahead of me in the hallway. I feel like a king or something has arrived. Like, wow, they're lighting up for me. These are all quite impressive in certain ways to watch. San Francisco is a city that probably is greener than most. That doesn't mean it's very green, but they at least talk about it. But you look downtown at night and all the buildings are lit up. Because there's no motion sensors, and those lights turn the lights off at night when no one's in the room, or even you can bring the dimness down, the lights down to a dim level. If for some reason you feel you need to have at least a certain amount of lights on in the building. So this is kind of the low-hanging fruit that Europe has done a lot more towards than we have in the United States. And of course, the trains and the subways, and an American car takes 40% more fuel go a mile in an American car than it does to go in a European car. The standby power. You know, our appliances today use quite a lot of electricity in aggregate, and because, you know, the manufacturers for some reason decided that they would sell more stereos if they're always blinking at us, whether they're being used or not. And so you can retain this heat with 90% efficiency again. So these are the sorts of designs that are rather eye-popping in certain ways that I think are exciting and that Europe is leading the way on. So all I can say is keep going. I was talking earlier with a member of parliament, and he was talking about a member of the Bundestag from the Green Party. And he was talking about that maybe it might be necessary to slap a carbon tax on the U.S. for imports coming into Europe if the Americans don't get our act together more. You know, you start, instead of doing protections type tariffs based on labor or other things, you do it based on have you done enough to rein in your carbon, and if not, then they make you pay some sort of tax as your imports come into other countries. So
in the United States, I still follow the New York Times and Washington Post, and sometimes look at other U.S. newspapers. It's true that the image you get of Europe is often very negatively portrayed, which is kind of amazing because when you do live here, you see a lot of the benefits of the European-style social democracy and the healthcare system. You have far fewer people who are really living in the cold. Not that you don't have some, but you also have, I think, a much stronger emphasis on thinking about planetary problems. Not that that doesn't exist in the U.S. as well, but Stephen Hill's book does a really marvelous job of walking you through the many, many positive things that you can find in Europe. And I think especially for audiences outside of Europe, it will be very important to show them the changes that have happened here and the many steps towards making Europe a more livable, a more sustainable, a more socially equitable society.
A process that cleans the atmosphere from too much carbon. It is possible, together with reforesting and others. And all this investment is mostly already a profitable investment at the moment. And we must bring this strategy to the world. And this is why we have to combine it with the financial industry. For renewable energy, electricity production, photovoltaic, wind power, biogas or anything else, has the allowance to go to the grid, and he cannot refuse from the grid operator to bring the electricity to the grid. That's one point. The second point is the grid operator has to pay and feed-in tariff that is high enough that the investment is profitable. And then the money will come. That's the basic of the feed-in tariff.
It has made some gains, but when the federal level is so dysfunctional, it's hard to lock that in at a national level. And that's really, at some point, it has to crystallize there. It has to come together at the national level, at the federal level. And that's where, I mean, in the House of Representatives, for example, they've already passed their cap and trade law. It's sitting there waiting for the Senate to take it up.
And now Europe has it. And the U.S., which looked like maybe it wanted it, looked even like the Republicans maybe wanted it, doesn't want it anymore. What's happened?
5 years ago, many of the issues I raised in the book would have just been, you know,